Hi, Job here, Poet Laureate for the City of Davis with a weekly poetry reading for you. Uh, this time the poems of W.S. Merwin's collection, The Shadow of Sirius, which won the Pulitzer Prize in 2009. He also won a Pulitzer in 1971. W.S. Merwin won the National Book Award for Poetry in 2005, and he won the Tanning Prize, one of the highest honors bestowed by the Academy of American Poets. And also in 2010, the Library of Congress named him the 17th Poet Laureate of the United States of America. That's somewhat more turf than I have here in the city of Davis. He passed away about 19 months ago at the age of 91. He was living in Hawaii for the last 30-something years. He had been, he'd taken over an old plantation and was regrowing trees, natural trees for Hawaii, and did a pretty good job of it, too. Okay, now the poems we're going to read today, as I said, are from The Shadow of Sirius, which won the Pulitzer for him. Now, I hope I don't stumble. These poems, it's not that he uses hard language, but late in his career he stopped punctuating, and so it's easy to stumble. All right, I'll do my best. The first poem I'm going to read is called Accompaniment. The wall in front of me is all one black mirror, in which I see my hands washing themselves all by themselves, knowing what they are doing, as though they belong to someone I do not see there and have never seen, who must be older than I am since he knows what he's doing above the basin of bright metal, in the black wall where the water looks as still as a frozen lake at night, though the bright ripples on it are trembling, and under me the floor and my feet on it are trembling. It is late. It was late when we started. Over my shoulder, my mother's voice is telling me what we do next on the way, and how the train is made that is taking us away, and in a while I will be asleep, and I will wake up far away. We are going south, where I know that my father is going to die. But I will grow up before he does that. The hands go on washing themselves. This is called Without Knowing. If we could fly, there would be numbers apart from the seasons. In sleep, I was flying south, so it was autumn. Numberless autumn, with its leaves already far below me. Some were falling into the river of day, the invisible surface that remembers and whispers, but does not tell even in sleep. Not this time. From the start. Who did I think was listening when I wrote down the words in pencil at the beginning? Words for singing to music I did not know, and people I did not know would read them and stand to sing them, already knowing them. While they sing, they have no names. Far along in the story, the boy walked on with a flock of cranes following him, calling as they came from the horizon behind him. Sometimes he thought he could recognize a voice in all that calling, but he could not hear what they were calling. And when he looked back, he could not tell one of them from another in their rising and falling, but he went on trying to remember something in their calls until he stumbled and came to himself, and with the day before him wide open and the stones of the path lying still, and each tree in its own leaves, the cranes were gone from the sky, and at that moment he remembered who he was, only he'd forgotten his name. I forget everything. The Pinnacle. We're reading the poems of W.S. Merwin today. Both of us understood what a privilege it was to be out for a walk with each other. We could tell from our different heights that this kind of thing happened so rarely that it might not come around again, for me to be allowed, even before I had started school, to go out for a walk with Miss Giles, who had just retired from being a teacher all her life. She was beautiful in her camel hair coat, that seemed like the autumn leaves. Our walk was her idea. We liked listening to each other. Her voice was soft and sure, and we went our favorite way the first time, just in case it was the only time. Even though it might be too far, we went all the way up the Palisades to the place we called the Pinnacle, with its park at the cliff's edge overlooking the river. It was already a secret, the Pinnacle, as we were walking back, when the time was later than we realized, and in fact no one seemed to know where we had been. Even when we told them, no one had heard of the Pinnacle. And then where did she go? Beautiful. This is called The First Days. D-A-Y-S, The First Days, not D-A-Z-E. As I come from a continent that I saw closing behind me like a lost element, day after day before I believed I was leaving it, here resurfacing through the long backlight of my recollection is this other world, veiled with its illusion of being known at the moment of daybreak, when the dreams all at once are gone into shadow, leaving only in their place the familiar, once familiar landscape. With its road open to the south, the roofs emerging on the way from their own orbits according to an order as certain as the seasons, the fields emerald and mustard, and beyond them the procession of hills with red cows on the slopes, and then the edging clouds of sheep. In the house door at evening, one old verb in the lock turning, and the fragrance of cold stone as once more the door cedes in a dark hush, and neither answers nor forgets, and an unchanged astonishment that has never been tamed, nor named, nor held in the hand, nor ever fully seen, but is still the same, a vision before news, a gift of flight in a dream of clear depths, where I glimpse, far out of reach, the lucid days from which now I am made. This is called The Walled Place Above the River. There are fields smaller than this. I have seen them tilled and harvested by the old who still labored by hand down the lane and out on the upland, where they are forgotten now. Their own names do not believe in them. And there are rooms bigger than this and houses I have visited, finding myself in occasions full of voices or sometimes silence, but not the silence here. The lid of earth inside the walls in Dublin, where Hopkins' bones were left, among those of fellow Jesuits. As I recall, it is of a size roughly comparable to this, which years ago I thought might be where my own remains should lie. Over there in the northwest corner under the oak, with the whole valley beyond it blue at noon, and the voice of the oriole tumbling from the woods to the east again after years of absence, and 3 black and orange butterflies cruising the white glare of the grass, is the only grave I know here. That of the donkey abandoned by his mother and carried to the barn, cold nose out of the brambles into which he had rolled, and he followed us, and the warm bottle for a week that is not a place made for knowledge. I do not know what the enclosure was built for, dug out facing north toward the far side of the river and leveled like a terrace, and why the walls were raised stone on stone to form a square with the 2 narrow passages, one toward the barn, one toward the fields below, nor who made it, nor how long ago. But I have been listening to it since I was young, and its voice is the same voice, though the leaves have changed and the seasons and some of the longings. Now a soft breath stirs the trees as morning ends. In a few days it will be summer. This is called Just This by W.S. Merwin. When I think of the patience I have had back in the dark before I remember or knew it was night, until the light came all at once at the speed it was born to, with all the time in the world to fly through and not concerned about ever arriving, and then the gathering of the first stars, hurried in their flowering spaces, and far into the story the planets cooling slowly, and the ages of rain, then the seas starting to bear memory. The gaze of the first cell at its waking, how did this haste begin, this little time at any time, this reading by lightning, scarcely a word, this nothing, this heaven. The Laughing Thrush. O nameless joy of morning, tumbling upward note by note out of the night and the hush of the dark valley, and out of whatever has not been there, song unquestioning and unbounded, yes, this is the place, and the one time, in the whole of before and after, with all of memory waking into it, and the lost visages that hover around the edge of sleep, constant and clear, and the words that have lately fallen silent to surface among the phrases of some future, if there is a future. Here is where they all sing, the first daylight, whether or not anyone is listening. And they actually put a poem on the back cover here, and I'm going to close with that. This is called Just This. When I think of the patience I have had back in the dark, before I remember or knew it was night. I read this one. I already read this. I pulled this from inside. Well, I'm going to close with a poem for sure. We'll just have to pick this one at random. Grace Note. I'm not going to read it twice. Come on. I'm a goofy old man, but I'm not that goofy. Grace Note by W.S. Merwin. It is at last any morning, not answering to a name. Let me start this again. I knew this would happen without the punctuation. It is at last any morning, not answering to a name. I wake before there is light, hearing once more that same music without repetition or beginning, playing away into itself in silence like a wave, a unison in its own key, that I seem to have heard before. I was listening, but by the time I hear it now, it is gone, as when on a morning alive with sunlight, almost at the year's end, a feathered breath, a bird flies in at the open window, then vanishes, leaving me believing what I do not see. W.S. Merwin, The Shadow of Sirius, a Pulitzer Prize-winning collection of poems. I hope you will join me again next week when Friday late afternoon or early evening I will post this reading on YouTube and on my blog. Thank you very much. Be safe.